I want to welcome each of you here tonight to the August 16th combined meeting of the School District of Oconee County Board of Trustees. If you just joined us, we previously had our summer graduation where we saw 6 students who have worked throughout the summer to graduate in the summer of 2021. So that's been an exciting time for us, and we're very proud of those students. Tonight, as we begin our meeting, I ask that you join me in a moment of silence if you'd like to. We begin each meeting that way, so please join me. Amen. Now, if you will stand and join me in the pledge to the flag, please. Attention, salute, pledge. All right, at this time, I'd like an approval of the agenda for the August 16th work session and regular meeting agenda.
And Ms. McCormick, I would like to ask for 2 quick changes to the agenda. Number 1, we just did, just a quick typo, but we want to change the special recognition to Pledge of Allegiance. But the more critical one is during executive session, I need to add your consideration of an employee grievance. So if someone would be willing to make those changes, it would help us.
All right, do I have a motion that we change the special recognition to the Pledge of Allegiance and add an employee grievance to the executive session? Have a second? All in favor? All right, and now we need to vote on the amended agenda. So do I have a motion that we approve the agenda as amended? Second? All in favor? All right, so the amended agenda is approved for August 16th, 2021. At this time, we have 30 minutes set aside. That is what is allotted for public comment. And I know we have, public comment is limited to 5 minutes per person, so we ask that you really stick to that tonight. We have 6 people that have signed up for public comment, and we have 1 that is waiting that will be given time to talk if there is time allowed. Mr. Hanvey will be doing the timing, and when you get 1 minute left, he's going to hold up a yellow card for you to see. And when the red card is, that is your 5 minutes is up. And public comment will be down here at the podium. So, at this time, if you will call our first person.
Good evening. I would like to thank you for allowing for me to speak today. Tonight, I will address my concern with the current COVID-19 protocols in the schools and how they fall short amongst the rising COVID cases due to the Delta variant. But first, introductions. My name is Sarah Foster, and I am the mother of 3 beautiful little girls, 2 of whom are currently enrolled at Westminster Elementary School in 1st and 3rd grade. In addition to caring for my children, I am the owner and operator of Sable Farms, our family sheep farm in Westminster. Many of you have probably seen my farm with my flock of sheep grazing in the front yard, or watched from the road to see the lambs bouncing around in the spring grass. What you do not see from the road is the tough decisions I have to make as the shepherd of my flock. I am constantly making choices that may not be comfortable for an individual animal if it means protecting the flock as a whole. In a society, we are the shepherds over our more vulnerable members, including the sick, the elderly, and the young. As Mahatma Gandhi said, the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. Last year, we asked our children to make sacrifices in the name of protecting our most vulnerable adults. Now it is time for the adults to repay that sacrifice to make sure our children stay safe. According to the Mayo Clinic, the Delta variant of COVID-19 is over 2 times more contagious than the original strain, and it is infecting younger people. The highest peak of COVID-19 cases in South Carolina, as reported by SCDHEC, was the week of January 16, 2021. During that week, school-aged children ages 5 to 17 accounted for roughly 1,600 out of 6,400 cases, which was 24.6% of cases that week. Last week in South Carolina, school-aged children accounted for roughly 1,200 out of 3,500 cases statewide, or 33.7% of cases. That is an increase of nearly 1.5 times the number of pediatric cases in South Carolina as compared to the peak back in January. Last school year, the school district of Oconee County implemented COVID-19 safety protocols that kept community spread in elementary schools to a minimum. Now, with the increase in COVID cases in children, we need to readopt those safety protocols to keep our children safe. Pickens County schools started back on August 3rd. And after 9 days of instruction in implementing similar COVID safety protocols as our county has for this school year, they are now going virtual due to a spike in COVID-19 cases that surpass the community spread rate in the general population. Unless we want Oconee schools to suffer the same fate as Pickens, we must act swiftly and aggressively to slow the spread of this virus in our schools. I implore you to readopt the 3 following COVID-19 safety protocols from last school year. 1, universal mask mandates for students, teachers, and staff, regardless of vaccination status. 2, limiting non-essential visitors in the school building. 3, returning to potting of classroom populations to reduce student interaction, including eating breakfast and lunch in the classroom, no mingling of classes on the playground, and students remaining in their homeroom classroom for specials such as art, music, and engineering. Keeping our kids healthy, safe, and in the classroom is everyone's goal, but there are certain protocols that need to be followed to do that. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, universal masking in schools for all students, teachers, and staff is paramount in keeping face-to-face instruction safe. My children have been home from school for 516 days since Oconee County schools shut down in March of 2020. So believe me when I say I am tired of COVID, and I am tired of restrictions, and I want my children to go back to as normal a life as they can. But in order to do that, we need to come together as a community and protect our children so that we can knock out this virus. And that means making the hard and uncomfortable decisions so that everyone in our flock can be safe. Yes, masks are uncomfortable, and yes, my kids coming back home for virtual school would be uncomfortable, but I am blessed to where it would be just that, uncomfortable. Unfortunately, for many of our county families, sending the kids back virtual due to uncontrolled spread in the schools is not a luxury they can afford. We need to keep their needs at the forefront of our minds as well, and do everything in our power to keep our children healthy in school. I'm going to end with an excerpt from Philippians 2, verse 3 to 4. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of the others. Thank you for your time, and God bless.
My name is Debbie McCrabb, and I'm a concerned grandmother of 2 very young, unvaccinated children starting school this week. I would like to express my concern over the lack of action taken to make schools safe by reinstating COVID safety protocols like last year. This recent surge of the Delta variant is not to be taken lightly. Not taking immediate precautions during the first week of school is very alarming. When you read about schools around the country closing and going virtual due to the number of positive cases. One such school district is close to us, Pickens County. This is where Oconee County schools are headed if nothing is done to stop it. What does it take to recognize that this current Delta variant is more deadly than the first COVID strand, that we have children returning to school who can't be vaccinated due to their age? Why would we ignore the CDC's most current update recommending universal indoor masking for all teachers, staff, students, and visitors to K through 12 schools regardless of their vaccination status? Just looking at South Carolina's growing numbers should put a chill up our spines. The Delta variant is the dominant COVID strand in South Carolina right now, placing South Carolina in a high-risk status, according to the South Carolina's Department of Health. The Department of Health and Environment Control reported on 14 August that South Carolina had almost 15,000 new COVID cases in a week, and that the percentage of positive COVID tests is beyond the point considered under control. Record numbers of children have been hospitalized over the past month, and pediatric ICUs everywhere are being filled to capacity, predominantly in the South. And now, with school starting, those numbers will go up. According to the U.S. and NBC News on August 14th, the number of children hospitalized with COVID in the U.S. hit a record high. This is not the COVID from last year. This one is worse, and it's attacking our children. People around the U.S. are starting to stand up to their governors' mandates of no masks. School districts in Florida, Texas, and Arizona have mandated masks to be worn in schools, defying orders from the state governors who banned districts from imposing mask mandates. Even locally, Clemson University professors announced they plan to walk out over lack of COVID precautions, namely mask wearing. And today, the South Carolina Teachers Group called on McMaster to declare an emergency and require masks in school, saying if the governor doesn't allow mandatory masking in school, educators will defy the state's rule to protect students. These things are happening now, and it's up to us as a community to take the necessary steps to protect our greatest asset, our children. It's time to push back and start listening to the medical experts. Let lawyers stick to the law and stop making medical decisions. Again, I ask, what does it take to start protecting our children now? I'm asking you to provide a safe environment for the children returning to school by at least reinstating the COVID safety protocols that were there last year. These protocols cost little to nothing to implement. When it comes to the safety of our children, our future, we need to take whatever means we have at our disposal to do what needs to be done. We can't afford to wait and see. Our children's lives are at risk. Let's make Oconee County schools in South Carolina part of the solution and not part of the problem. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Kristen Wurst, and I'm the parent of a first grade student at Kiwi Elementary. My daughter attended full-day kindergarten last year wearing a mask all day and staying within her class cohort. The students stayed within a 3-foot taped square that their desk was inside. Her class was never quarantined. If we follow the science, then we can mitigate the risks. We need to reinforce current mitigation measures along with reinstating last year's mitigations in order to prevent a lot of illness, pain, and suffering. It seems like everyone wants to go back to the days before the pandemic. I want to do that, but it's not time to do that yet. I saw very few masks at back to school night. It was shocking. It was almost as if the pandemic wasn't around anymore. The pandemic is still here. Teacher and staff buy-in is essential for the mitigation measures to work. We need them to buy into what we're doing. They need to be wearing masks. The students need to see them wearing masks. My daughter was the only one wearing her mask today in her class out of 20 children. The only one, including the teacher, didn't have a mask on. And I did not tell her to wear her mask. I said, please wear your mask on the bus. If that's the at least you could do is please wear your mask on the bus, because I understood that the buses might be crowded. She chose to wear her mask all day. And some kids told her, you don't need to wear that, take it off. And she kept it on. So we need our teachers and we need the staff to lead by example. I would also like for there to be more posters on the walls, stickers on the floors indicating 3 feet so the children know where to stand. They're intelligent, and if we expect them to be able to follow directions, they will be able to do it. And my daughter was able to do it last year, so I know that these kids can do it. What makes the Delta variant different? Why did Pickens County go to remote learning or quarantining so quickly this year after 9 days? Well, the Delta variant is 2 times more contagious than last year's strain. So last year we had mitigations in place in the school, and this year we don't even have those mitigations that were in place. And this variant is, instead of infecting 2.5 people, it'll infect 4. And the environment that our children are in, not vaccinated, nobody wearing masks, although there were a few teachers, and I want to acknowledge there were some teachers. But that is the environment where that Delta variant will thrive. So we need to stop right now and make some changes so that we can protect our kids. Reinforce the measures that we have and reinstate the measures we had last year. Masks on school buses, potting in classrooms, eating breakfast and lunch in the classroom, not commingling classes on the playground, bringing specials like arts and music to the classroom so that the children aren't being exposed needlessly to others in the hallway. Keeping 3 feet between desks, facing them the same way, using the plexiglass. There isn't a vaccine for our school-age children under 12, and so it's up to us to protect them. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lewis Collins. I'm here to address the so-called Chromebook insurance fee. Before my children even set foot in school this year, I received a phone call asking for money. I am always asked for money throughout the school year. I already pay taxes. The phone call is a consistent occurrence in the school year. I'm curious as to what my tax dollars go towards. It is my understanding that the Chromebooks in the county came from federal grant money, taxpayer dollars. If a Chromebook is damaged by a student, the parents of that student are expected to pay to replace it. With roughly 10,000 students attending school in this county, splitting evenly between 5,000 elementary students and 5,000 middle and high schoolers, and that comes out to approximately $175,000 coming into the school district. Where is that money going? Is there an insurance policy? Who's the insurance policy through? How much does the insurance policy cost? If there's leftover money, where does that money go? Is it going to someone? I highly doubt that the cost of these Chromebooks is $175,000 a year. What about, I already went over that. The parents and taxpayers deserve to know where this money is going. coming out of their pockets. I understand that there's no rebuttals at the school board meeting, but I do expect and think that the school district should explain in some way or another how much money was brought in from the Chromebook fees, what it paid for, why it was requested, and if there was more needed, how is it used for the students of this county? Thank you.
Hello. My name is Hannah. I'm not going to repeat much of what the ladies already said, um, but I have 3 children. My daughter just started Seneca High School. My twins just started first grade. All 3 of them did not go face to face last year. My boys missed their kindergarten year. My daughter missed her last year of middle school. We chose to put them in face to face this year because I felt like they missed out on so much. My boys, frankly, entered first grade behind their classmates because I didn't do as good of a job as their kindergarten teacher would have done. But I feel like we're dealing with a new situation. The COVID virus last year is completely different than this one. Um, Friday in Dallas, Texas, there were no pediatric ICU beds because they were full of COVID patients. That means if your child was in a car accident or, God forbid, a medical emergency, you would be turned away. That can happen here. And here we are going 5 days a week, face to face. I understand that our governor and our General Assembly has threatened to take funds away if at least, I think it's, if more than 5% of your students are not face to face or something like that. I understand you're at risk of losing money for the county. But I feel like I'm being forced to choose between my child's education and their health, which is not fair. And to be frank, it's called problems in our home. My husband completely disagrees with me sending them to school. Um, I sent my kids in mass today. One of my twins' teachers sent me a picture, or sent the parents a picture on Class Dojo at 9:38. So he had been there about 2 hours. His mask was off. He was in the floor playing with his classmates, which was wonderful to see. But it was so scary because I was so afraid that he was being infected and didn't know it. I would appreciate you taking up the issue of mask mandates. I think they're needed. I understand it's uncomfortable, but I really think that at this point, that's what our county needs. I don't want to be like Pickens and be 9 days in and have to pull my kids back out. I don't want to be like Lancaster County, who lost a 16-year-old student Thursday to COVID. They are mourning a classmate on their first day of school. And I don't want that for my children. So I just ask that you take up the mask mandate again. Like the lady said, do the pods in the classroom. I'm not familiar with that. My kids didn't go last year. But it sounds like it may work. At this point, I think we need to try anything because I don't want that to be my student, my child, that I'm having to put in the hospital or, God forbid, lose to this horrible virus.
Board members, Dr. Thorsland, and district staff, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Micah 6:8, a favorite verse of mine. My comments this evening are relevant to this verse, diversity and inclusion, anti-racism, and the topic of which you were blindsided about a few weeks ago, critical race theory. I'm a bit ashamed that I did not come sooner, but I was chicken, plain and simple. A perfect example of my privilege as a white person who doesn't want to get involved in standing up against loud people about something that I don't have to worry about as much as other people in our community. The truth is, the controversy over critical race theory was deliberately orchestrated. It is not taught in a single K through 12 school in the country. It's a graduate and law school field of study. How did it get so big? Well, during COVID last year, a lot of private and public sector professionals were working from home. After the George Floyd murder, many companies and government agencies conducted training on implicit bias and diversity and inclusion. Slides on some of this training from the city of Seattle were passed to a guy named Chris Rufo, a Seattle former filmmaker turned writer for obscure conservative publications. He appeared on Tucker Carlson in early September and challenged the then president to issue an executive order to stop such training in the federal government, and he did. Subsequently, politicians and certain media outlets have continued beating this drum, strategically rebranding any training or education which deals with race as forbidden fruit. That's why you heard the yelling and threats. Ironically, critical race theory is about disparate impact of systems and institutions toward people of color. It's not about the guilt of a particular individual. Therefore, this contention that our teaching our children accurate and complete history and teach them that will make white children feel guilty is absolutely ridiculous. David McMahon, the local GOP chair, is quoted in the paper as saying, well, it does teach white people oppressed another race, and it's still happening today. Well, yeah, but better said, white-centric systems oppressed people of another race, and it's still happening today. I spent a number of years in my church working on issues of racial reconciliation and anti-racism. Even as a supposedly enlightened person, I was so proud of myself. I do not score well on implicit bias tests. This is unconscious bias that because I grew up where I've grown up, taught the way I was taught, lived the way I've lived, I have inside of me. Several years ago, I stopped saying that I wasn't racist. Today, I say I don't want to be racist. I'm an anti-racist, and that's really the opposite of racist, is an anti-racist, because we've all got that in us. In the end, I believe, if I believe Micah 6:8, I have to decide if I really believe in justice and equality. Without a doubt, we must reckon with systemic racism in our country. This should not be a red flag term, but it is, so we may have to start calling it something different. But the school district of Oconee County, we exist, and I'm a product of that school district, and so were my children, and now my grandchildren, exist to educate the children of Oconee County and prepare them for life, a life in a very diverse society. As a school district board members, you oversee a system, and so here are 3 important actions that I recommend. Teach the truth, age-appropriate, accurate, and complete American and world history in elementary and secondary schools, and don't do it just in February. This is a diverse world and country. All children need it. I worked in industry and management all my years, and I supervised a Colombian that lived in Mexico, a Chinese lady with a green card that lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a Spaniard that lived in Germany, one American from Anderson that lived in Seneca, and another Mexican that happened to live in Mexico. That's what our kids are graduating and going to work in. Include diversity, equality, and inclusion in professional development. You've got college-educated professionals on staff, and they need and deserve that training. and include diversity, equality, and inclusion in your mission statement and strategic planning. Ms. Shepard did an excellent job discussing this when she spoke a few weeks ago, but then she caught some terrible backlash by letters to the editor, writers in the Seneca Journal. Know this, major corporations with sites located in Oconee County already consider diversity and inclusion critical to their success. It is boldly included in their corporate vision and strategic priorities. These vital Oconee employers clearly recognize the importance of diversity to their business success. And if you doubt me, check out the websites of Duke Energy, Sandvik, Schneider Electric, Sealed Air, and BASF. So I know my time's up, but I also want to say on another urgent topic, let's talk about this COVID protocols. I'm glad that's high on the agenda, and we want to make sure our children are safe. Thank you.
I am speaking in place of Miss Sharon Williams. She donated her time to me. My name is Luke Moore, and I called and tried to sign up for this, but no one took my call, and I left a message, and I'm apparently not on the list anyways. But this is about to be a little different than the way we've been seeing this go, and I appreciate you ladies saying follow the science, because the science says that the cloth mask is 20% effective, and you took them off to put your mouth to this mic that everybody else has to take it to. Yeah, she wasn't. All right. Second of all, the CRT, Miss Jody. It say it's not taught in any school, then you turn around and say, I want it taught in the schools, basically. Saying I don't want religion taught in school, and then saying we're just going to teach them how to pray, read their Bible, learn the 10 Commandments of those things, but we're not going to teach religion. Would you be okay with that? Because that's what's happening with the CRT. It's being brought in. Ms. Shepard wants to talk about the same things you just said. You are approving the CRT. You said you're a racist, and I'm sorry to hear that, because I'm not. But to each their own. But either way, I'm here today to tell everybody that this is still America. And we got Joe Biden talking about if you don't take a vaccine and get the mandate, they're going to lock down interstates for us. Do y'all agree with that? You do? Phew, no. Okay. So, either way, listening here just gets me steaming upset, boys. I mean, what happened to America? What happened to freedom? What happened to, if you're scared for your kid, why can't your kid wear a mask? Okay. I'm going to talk to who I want to. Shut up, it's my time. I'm going to give my time back up so that I don't get too disrespectful. But I'm going to tell you what, boys, this is out of line talking about stuff like that. And then turn around trying to push on everybody else. This is still America. Each man still deserves to be able to make his own mind up about what he wants to do with his own body or with his child. If you're scared for your child, please put the mask on them and tell them, don't sit beside my child. Okay? I understand you're here. I'm fixing to go. I'm not doing anything wrong, but they're upset that they don't like what I'm saying. You talked about the Bible. The Bible talks about the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast says you can't buy or sell without that mark. And they're saying that you ain't going to be able to travel the interstate. You ain't going to be able to go to work or nothing unless you take this vaccine. I'm not saying the vaccine's the mark of the beast. I see you. And I'll go with you politely in just a second.
The 30 minutes for public comment has expired, so you need to put the microphone
all right,
down.
and I'll say the last thing. I want to thank you for cooperating with the FOIA request we just sent you. That'll be number 1, and we appreciate it.
All right, I thank everyone who spoke tonight. And at this point, we're going to continue with our meeting. And our next item on the agenda is approval of minutes for July 19th, 2021 combined board meeting. Were there any changes, any additions, any deletions to those minutes? All right, none being they are approved as presented. And now we have our superintendent's report, Dr. Michael Thorsland.
Thank you, Ms. McCormick. Just a couple of things. that I want to mention tonight. Mainly, I want to talk to you about our COVID protocols, but I did just want to mention to Mr. Collins and just to let everyone know about the Chromebook fees. We do charge a $10 Chromebook fee for elementary schools, and that's a $25 fee reduced to $10 for free and reduced lunch students at the middle and high school level. And that does generate some money to the school district. We have shopped for insurance plans. Those insurance plans are extremely expensive, but we have very gifted technology staff members, so we do self-insure. And I can get statistics on the number of screens we replace each year, the number of keyboards we have to replace each year, and the number of machines in general that we have to replace each year. And we are much more competitive than a commercial insurance plan. So that is what that money goes to. But also, just as far as replacing those machines, we have, in a typical class in Oconee County, we have about 700 to 750 students. So if you took all the first graders across our district, it would, in a typical year, be 700 to 750 students. Just to keep up with technology, we try to replace Chromebooks about every 4 years. So that means over a student's school career, they're going to have 3 different Chromebooks. So typically you can kind of think of elementary, middle, and high that they'll get a new Chromebook to use, which means we have to replace, with new Chromebooks, 3 classes per year. So that's about 2,100 students. A Chromebook costs us about $250. So that's over $500,000 a year just to keep students in new Chromebooks. So I certainly understand. I've had 4 kids go through public schools right here in Oconee County. I get the nickel and diamond. You feel like you're paying fees and you're paying for something every time you turn around. I understand it, and I know it's not always pleasant, but I can assure you that that money is being used for technology, and it is staying in the technology department. It's not being, certainly not going to people or anything like that. It is used, and I'd be happy to have a discussion with you if you want more information. We can sit down with the technology director and try to answer any questions you might have. The main thing I wanted to talk tonight about is kind of our situation with COVID right now. Of course, Pickens County's decision on Friday did, I emailed our staff today and used the word angst. It created some angst for school districts all around the upstate. I even think that word traveled to neighboring states. I've had heard from people out of state saying they heard the report on the news about Pickens County closing their schools. I can just tell you my philosophy is that we are public servants as educators, and the best way that we can serve the public of Oconee County is to keep kids in school. So my first priority is to keep students in face-to-face education with the most freedom possible. In other words, returning to pre-COVID conditions as soon as possible. Now, when we made decisions this summer, the virus was at very, very low levels. We met with our principals on July the 22nd, and the virus was increasing by then, but still at relatively low levels. So when decisions were made to begin this school year, we were in a different place than we are now. The 3 weeks since then, we've seen staggering growth, primarily with the Delta variant. So I agree with many of the speakers tonight that we do have an urgent concern for students. So to do the best job that we can to stay in school, we will attempt to re-implement many of the protocols that were in place last school year. We sent an email to principals today and kind of gave them a heads up that over the course of this week, because we can't just snap our fingers and have everything in place, we will implement some protocols. But I want to be very clear, mainly for the folks in the audience tonight, the state legislature in South Carolina, through a budget proviso, which is kind of a way to make laws through the budget process. They did pass a law in South Carolina that says public school districts cannot mandate students or staff members to wear masks. As superintendent, I don't have the authority to tell students you have to wear masks in our schools, nor do I have the authority to tell staff members that you have to wear a mask in our schools. So that is not on the table. That's not something we can implement. Some things that we can implement that we will discuss with principals tomorrow are strongly encouraging mask use. You can see that many of us are wearing them tonight. I do believe that it's difficult to ask someone to do something if you don't do it yourself. So I will, as I visit schools and go into classrooms, I will try to model what I hope people will do, because I'm one who does believe that if you cover your face, it does reduce the amount of respiratory droplets that escape your mouth when you're talking or sneezing or coughing. So I do think that is something that could be helpful. So we will encourage mask use, though we can't mandate it. We do want to start meals in classrooms for elementary schools again. We've worked with our Sodexo staff, and they have ordered the supplies that they need in order for that to happen. That will be later this week. It won't start tomorrow, but we hope to have that implemented later this week. We are planning to suspend field trips right now for the first 9 weeks and reevaluate as that second 9 weeks approaches. We are going to suspend visitors to the school to only essential visitors. So certainly if a parent needs to come for a meeting with a teacher or something like that, the principals will make accommodations to have a safe place for those meetings to occur. However, we won't allow parents to come eat lunch with their child in the cafeteria, that type of thing. So we will have essential visitors only. We are going to talk to the principals at elementary schools about minimizing student transitions as well as intermixing of classes to try to keep cohort groups together. The reason for that is if we do have to close, we want to close the smallest unit possible. So I understand earlier today we closed a team, a sports team at one of our high schools. That's a small unit. We closed that team. We didn't close the whole school. We didn't close all athletics. We closed that particular team. We would want to do the same with classes. We would close a class first, perhaps a grade level if it got worse, perhaps a school if it even got really bad in one particular school, before we would close the entire district. Again, closing the district is the last thing I would like to do. We want to continue, we've asked principals to do this anyway, but continue to try to maximize the distance between persons in all situations. That's classroom, cafeteria. We'll ask our high school, middle school, high school principals to try to put as much space between students in the cafeteria as possible. So maximizing distance. And then one other thing that we talked about this morning that we would like to reinstitute, which has a price to it, is we would like to use some of our federal money that came in COVID relief to reinstitute a COVID leave policy for our faculty and staff. Simply meaning that if a faculty member gets the virus, tests positive for the virus, or is in a quarantine situation because they're a close contact, we would not charge that person's leave for that time period that they're out. Charging that leave can cause staff members to say, oh, it's just a little fever, or oh, it's just a little cold, let me go to work today. That's not what we want. We've told our principals, symptoms should trump everything. Whether you're vaccinated, not vaccinated, if you feel bad, stay home, period. And that's what we're trying to get through to our staff, and we feel like if we can reinstitute the COVID leave policy from last year, we think it'll help faculty and staff members feel more comfortable staying home. Now, the one change we would like to make to that, some of our employees have young children at home, and the children get quarantined. We would like to give 10 days, if that becomes necessary, for those employees just to supervise dependents in their home, children. but we don't want that can't be, without end. So we would like to limit that to 10 days. But as far as quarantine situations or positive tests for the individual employee, we would just like to reinstitute our COVID policy and allow that leave to be covered. So those are some things that we would like to implement this week. And we will have discussions with principals beginning tomorrow morning. And then, of course, Ms. Dodd will help us get that information out to the public. But we, again, feel like the most important thing we can do as public servants is to stay in school, peel away all the extras, making classroom instruction the last thing to go. So that's kind of where we are and what we'd like to start doing tomorrow morning. And I'm happy to answer questions if any of you have questions.
All right, thank you so much for that update. I did want to address one thing that was on our the press release that was released last week. So I've got it here in front of me under our quarantine policy that states if a student is identified as a close contact through contact tracing, there's two options. If the individual is vaccinated, they will not be required to quarantine from school. The second one is if the individual is not vaccinated, a 10-day quarantine period will be required. So I would just like to ask that let's take the vaccination status and implement a testing status, that if an individual is close contact traced or tested positive a couple days later after they were contact traced, in order for the vaccinated student to come back before the 10-day is over for them to test negative. Is that possible?
Okay, first of all, I'm not a medical professional, so I'm going to give you my understanding. My understanding is when you're exposed to the virus, that typically it's a 4 to 5 day incubation period before you would test positive if you were going to. So I do think it would be difficult to do that because then we would be quarantining everyone. And most schools, universities, organizations that I'm aware of are following the CDC guidelines, which do say if you're a close contact but you're vaccinated, you don't need to quarantine. Unless you have symptoms. And we've been, as I mentioned earlier, we've been telling our principals, symptoms trump everything. If you have symptoms, stay at home, no matter your status. But if someone remains symptom-free and they've been vaccinated, the medical staff that we've been working with, Sherry McLaughlin, our lead nurse, as well as the doctors, DHEC, that she's been in communication with, are comfortable with vaccine proof, meaning that you can come out of quarantine and continue as a student or a staff member in the school district. So that I would not feel comfortable saying that we're not going to do that at this point. We're certainly happy to continue talking to people and learning more, but right now we feel like the CDC guidance supports this decision. Okay, and that is one good point. We got a win on Thursday or Friday last week. Ms. McLaughlin, our lead nurse, communicated with the makers of the test that we used last year. They extended the expiration date through mid-October, which just means the tests are still good. And DHEC has authorized us to continue doing the rapid antigen tests. So we do have tests. We will continue testing at the Bountyland Education Campus so we can help students or faculty and staff members get quick test results. And to your point, if a vaccinated person shows any symptom, we can immediately send them to the Bountyland campus to get the test from our nurses. and that will help us just know who needs to be at home isolated and who can return to school or work.
Okay, just another question. When we're talking about implementing the pods and cohorts and that sort of thing in the elementary schools, how can we keep the specials as much as possible? Is that what we're talking about in as far as gym, making sure that they're still staying active? And
Sure. So, good question, and that is something that we did pretty much through the duration of last school year. We did allow students in the elementary schools to actually move to their PE classes. We asked the PE teachers to put the activities outside as much as possible, but in the cold weather months, they did go to the gym. But in those gyms, they can space. They can keep 6 feet between students, and they did that. The other special classes, which would be art, music, in some schools it's technology, some schools it's library, those teachers actually pushed into the classroom instead of pulling the students out. I don't want to give you a definitive answer as to what our strategy would be without talking to elementary principals tomorrow. I did hear one elementary principal say that their specials teachers could kind of follow the same seating chart. So there may be some variation in how we do that, but the overall message would be that we're going to try to keep our elementary students in cohort groups, smaller groups than a whole grade level or a whole school. And that would help us if we did need to close a class, just close a class rather than closing the entire grade level or school.
Kind of answer your question. What the principal I talked with, in some cases, those rooms might be bigger than their actual classroom, so it could make sense to be able to spread them out. The problem is walking down the hallway and passing, and you get to a place and there's like gridlock at a hallway when 4 or 5 fifth grade classes are all going to specials. So it would have to be strategic. But that's one of the things that we started talking about today when we were, looking at changes.
So we will work with principals to make those final decisions, and each school's a little bit different. Just the actual layout of the floor plan. So there'll be deviations from building to building, but again, overall idea would be to minimize transitions for elementary students. That is a plan that we do not have in place right now. We did offer virtual classes to our families this year. The interest was very, very low. We do have one class of virtual instruction for grades 2 through 8. And those teachers, the elementary teachers, grades 2 through 5, are teaching from Tomasi Salem Elementary School. The middle school teachers, grades 6 through 8, are housed at West Oak Middle School. And we do have one class of students per grade level district-wide, which means we cannot add students to where we exceed a class, 20, 25 students. So we have not been allowing people to make that change at this time. I'm not going to say it's completely out of the question. We don't have plans for that right now. And that's something that we're just going to have to kind of see how many requests we have and monitor and adjust as needed. But we have not been allowing people to change over the last few days unless there is a significant medical reason or a family change. For example, there was one student who was virtual that needed to go back face-to-face, but it was because the caregiver was unable to care for the student anymore due to sickness. So, I'm not saying we won't make any change, but it's got to be a pretty well-documented reason for us to make a change one way or the other right now. So one of the speakers referenced the proviso. we have to have 95% of our students in face-to-face instruction. So that is something that we have to think about as well. As districts, if more districts do what Pickens did, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with state level decisions. But right now, we're planning to stay open as long as we can and keep our students as safe as we can.
Are there any other questions or comments? I know y'all join me in expressing our appreciation to Dr. Thorsland and the staff and the principals and everyone who has worked so hard to put all this together, because as he said 3 weeks ago, this isn't what we were expecting. But I hope you understand that the safety of the children and the education of the children are our top priorities, and they will remain that, and we will keep you informed as things are being changed in the schools. At this time, Mrs. Moore, we are ready for our July financial report, please.
Thank you very much. This is July. We're just getting started, so we had some mostly salaries for the 12-month employees and the startup supplies and computer software programs, mostly what we would have on the expenditures this month. And I'll take any questions about any of the report that you all have.
I noticed there are a lot of startup softwares. Are most of those just a one-time expense on the expense report? That's something we pay annually?
That is correct, and some of them, the more expensive ones, are ones that we are using our ESSER funding to purchase. There are some special ones that we've not been able to have in the past. And some of them are multi-year contracts.
Did anyone else have any questions about the financial information that you were presented with? Okay. All right, thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is the 2022 board meeting calendar, which y'all were sent previously. And Dr. Thorsland.
The law actually calls you to approve the board meeting calendar dates according to the calendar, not the school year calendar, the actual January through December. So you can see we've got dates there as proposal for 2022. And while you approve this, it doesn't necessarily mean it's set in stone. If something comes up and we need to change it later, you can certainly do that with additional action. But we would ask that you just consider this as our board meeting schedule for the year 2022.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? All right, any more discussion on the 2022 board meeting calendar? All right, all in favor? All right, it is approved. Our next item is first reading approval on policy CCE organizational chart.
Yeah, and that's just really to be consistent with the organizational structure we have at the district office right now. You are all aware of that. We just needed to update the org chart so that it matches the personnel we have in place.
All right, did anybody have any comments on that? All right, if not, do I hear a motion that we accept on first reading policy CCE organizational chart? Okay. Do I have a second? All right, all in favor? Okay, approved 5-0. And our next Exhibit 5, also to be approved on first reading, is the 2022-2023 school calendar.
This is the calendar we shared with you all in July. We wanted to try to get ahead of the curve, so to speak, for 22 2/23. We also, again, have this calendar where everyone's starting on the same date. There is the catch that it's before the state mandated third Monday in August, but for us to be able to finish first semester, for our students who take exams, for us to be able to do our dual enrollment classes where there's no overlap and kids are missing classes at Tri-County Tech because they're finishing up classes at their high school, for those things to happen. And that's with 88 days in the first semester. This is the only way we can do that. So we're going to continue to hope that the legislature makes the change and allows the local boards to do the calendars. But at this time, our recommendation is that we would have a calendar where the staff would start on August 2nd, and the students, all students, pre-K through 12, would start on August the 9th. We would be out the 24th of May, which is the middle of the week before Memorial Day. You will notice that there are 3 makeup days at the end of the school year. Those are required by state law, even though we typically would do hopefully e-learning days as the makeup days instead of the normal makeup days we used to have back in the good old days. So we would ask that you guys approve this calendar, and so we can get it set, and then we'll be done with that, and people can make plans, and we can move forward.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve on first reading the 2022-2023 school calendar. Any more discussion? All in favor? Okay, so that passes on first reading. And now we second reading approval for policy GBEA, staff ethics, conflict of interest, and nepotism.
Thank you. As a result of a state procurement audit for food service, we were required to put some consequences into this policy. So we copied the consequences that are in another board policy, GBEB, and that's the paragraph that you see in red. That is the only change to this policy, and I'll need to report this to the procurement officers.
All right, we've all had an opportunity to see this, and it has been approved on first reading. Do I have a motion that we approve on second reading policy GBEA? Okay. Do I have a second to that motion? Okay. Any more discussion at all? Again, it's just simple consequences of the policy. All right, all in favor? All right, and that passes unanimously. All right, at this point, this is the end of our regular meeting. And if there's no objection, we will approve and go into executive session for personnel items, employment recommendations and changes, and we added an employee grievance that will also be discussed. All right, we are adjourned for executive session. Thank y'all for being here.